right away. All right, so welcome everyone to the Champions of Human Resources Management Program. And today, our first edition in 2025 is focused on finding and selecting for. As usual, we will start off with highlighting some aspects of our company program, and we would also encourage our participants to mute their microphones until such a time that they are invited to speak. The session typically lasts for 1.5 hours. In between the sessions, you would have the opportunity, or in between the presentations, you would have the opportunity during the sessions to ask questions, to seek clarifications, to interact. We will certainly have some opportunity for you to do some group activity and reflections and discussions. And we hope to close at exactly 5:30 West African time, which is in about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Okay, I can see that we have some of our usual participants here from previous months, and we also have some new participants. So we'd like to welcome you all, from Abdul Salam to Buki, to Chiamaka, to Chibuzo, Chinedu, Chinelo, Ifoma, James, Kemi, Michael, Mojisola, Fumilayo, Oluwaseyi, Omoze, Sanda, Francis, and David, and to others whose names I've not called yet and who are still coming. Welcome to everyone. So I'm going to start off as usual. I'm going to share my slides, but before I do, I just want to do a sound check. So can everybody hear me? Anybody at all hear me? Yes? No?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent.
Yes, I
Thank
can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you. From time to time, it's possible that due to your network issues, you may be thrown out of the room. Please do not panic. Just feel free to come back in and we will readmit you. As usual, the session is recorded, so all members of the Champions of Human Resources mentoring platform and group that are also part of the WhatsApp group will certainly have access to the recordings of the session. So please, if you are not yet on the WhatsApp group and you want to join that WhatsApp group so that you can continue to be mentored and interact and network with other organizational leaders and human resources management professionals, feel free to drop your contact details in the chat with the administrator, who is captured as Learning Impact, and we will do our very best to add you to that group. Okay, so that's about the group. So let's jump right into the slides, into the presentation for today, and it is about finding and selecting A players. And I hope that you can see my screen as we are ready to go. So let's start off, as we always do, with a brief explanation and summary of the program, and particularly an introduction of our company, Learning Impact, for the benefit of those, especially those who are joining us for the first time. So Learning Impact is an Abuja-based corporate training, organizational development, strategy consulting, HR technology solutions provider that also provides services in e-learning and knowledge management, as well as life skills education and resources that are targeted at a particular group of life skills: leadership and personal effectiveness, communication skills, creativity and innovation, financial literacy, creativity and innovation, communication skills, as well as political literacy and civic education. That is typically targeted at children, at youth, and at families. But our other propositions are around corporate training and coaching, which is our flagship, strategy and organizational development consulting, where we support companies with crafting their strategies and implementing their strategy, enhancing the quality of their human resources management systems. We also provide HR technology solutions, helping and automating HR activities for different organizations. And we also provide one of our very important solutions around 360 in which we help organizations to measure and give feedback to their leaders, their managers, and professionals about their behaviors as a tool for leadership development and effectiveness. We also offer e-learning solutions that support organizations to build the capacity to deploy e-learning, which we have found to be very scalable, to be very cost effective, and supports creating a learning organization. So that in essence is our company Learning Impact. There are a number of my colleagues who are here on the call and in this webinar today. And we thank all of you for being here and for giving us the opportunity to serve you. Now, the Champions of HR program is really a program that is targeted at building a network of young to mid-career human resources management professionals who receive mentoring and support in order to grow their careers within and outside human resources management. Now, the core focus of this Champions of HR program is to build the strategic HRM capabilities of our participants. We understand that HR has been positioned over the years as being an operational part of the organization. And what we want to do is to challenge HR professionals to go beyond the operational and to be more strategic in their outlook and in their engagement with the organizations that they serve. The core part of the Champions of HR program is this webinar that we started in October 2023 that takes place on the third Saturday of each month. And we have done this consistently since 2023. The program also includes an active WhatsApp group where we continue to network, to exchange ideas, and we continue to learn, mentor, coach, and support each other. All right, so that in essence, to our, especially our new participants who are joining us for the first time, is a bit of a synopsis of our company, Learning Impact, as well as the Champions of HR program. So we're going to be jumping into the main course for today, which is finding and selecting A players. All right. So in terms of our learning objectives and outline, there are a few things we want to cover. Like I said, our goal is to deliver the presentation, give you the opportunity to interact, to ask questions, do a couple of activities, and then we hope to finish by 5:30 West African time today. We will start off, as always, with some theoretical and empirical foundations. At Learning Impact, we believe in the concept of evidence-based management, evidence-based human resources practices. So we always like to ask ourselves, what does the research say? What evidence exists and what theories support whatever practices that we are advocating to the public? So one of the practices that we're advocating through this program today is how to find and retain and select A players in your organization. So we want to ask ourselves, what's the theoretical and empirical basis for this? Then I would like to share some thoughts with you and have us discuss these thoughts on organizational success. The key question we'll be exploring is, what is it that makes organizations successful? And how does this tie in to the conversation today about finding and selecting A players? Then we would go to talk about why A players. What is this thing about A players and why are A players important? What are the characteristics of A players? And then how do you find and select A players? And we will end with a conversation, the larger conversation about A players, concept and the theory and the framework and the practice of a top graded organization, which is really what we would like our organizations to look like. Okay, so that in essence, ladies and gentlemen, is the outline for this mentoring session today. Before we continue, I'd just like to do a check. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, anything before we jump into the content? Yes? No? Going? Gone. So let's explore the theoretical foundations. Now, there are a number of theories and studies and research that has been done in the area of management and organizational behavior that sort of helps us to understand the concept of A players and some of the practices around finding and selecting A players. For the purpose of this session today, I'm just going to focus on 4 of these theories. The first of them comes from Barney, and it's called the resource-based view. Any student of management and human resources will be quite conversant with this resource-based view. It simply says that human resources are the critical resource for an organization to succeed. Therefore, it is important that we pay attention to getting the right quality of human capital. And so when you think about the A player, we're essentially talking about the right quality, the best quality of human capital in line with the resource-based view. Another very important theory that explains this concept of A players is what we call person-to-organization fit. Person-to-organization fit theory is a theory that explains the importance of the fit between the individual who works in an organization and the expectations, the culture of the organization. That when there is harmony between the person, the individual, and the organization, when there is alignment between them, here's what happens. That you will achieve, that is when you have an A player. You see, because an A player is contextual. The person who is doing well in the banking industry may not do well in the telecoms industry. The person who is doing well in the public service may not necessarily do well in the educational sector. It's about the right fit. So even if you are successful in one area, or even if you are very good in a particular skill, it does not necessarily mean that you fit an organization. So organizations are interested in fit, because if you've got the right person to organization fit, then voila, then you've got an A player. The third important theory to reflect on as we think about finding and selecting A players is what we call the psychological contract theory. The psychological contract states that there is a psychological expectation that employees have, and there is a psychological expectation that the employer, the organization, has, and that it is absolutely important for those expectations to be explored and for them to be congruent, so that there is a psychological contract. This psychological contract helps to ensure that the organization and person are an appropriate fit, and you can be an A player in that organization. Finally, the concept of the realistic job preview, the RJP theory, powerful theory that challenges us to ensure that when we recruit people, that we let them know the reality of our organization. And I'll give you a few examples here. So if, for example, your organization is one where people work long hours, where people have to work over weekends, then RJP theory says that when you are trying to attract and select people, you should be crystal clear about these expectations. No messing around. You want every prospective employee to know very clearly that this is what we do in our organization. This is our culture. Now, here's the truth. Are there people who want to work in an organization that they work long hours and weekends? Yes. Are there people who don't want to work in such an organization? Yes. RJP theory says that if you find the people who match your organization based on a realistic job preview, guess what? They would be A players because they would fit properly. But if you don't have a realistic job preview, if you conceal the good side and the bad side of your organization, prospective employees, then they would come and they would not be able to fit and will not be able to be A players. So I want us to think about these four theories: the resource-based view from Barney, the person to organization fit theory from Christoph, Rousseau's psychological contract theory, as well as Wallace's realistic job preview theory. These theories will help you to understand why it is important to have A players, and it will also help us to understand how to go about finding, attracting, and selecting A players. Before we pause, I would like us to reflect on something that was completely transformational for me many years ago. So here's what happened. My favorite magazine is something called Harvard Business Review. And many years ago, I was reading Harvard Business Review, and here's what I saw. I saw an advert from Netflix. And at this time, Netflix wasn't anything as popular as it is today. I'm talking about, this was probably like 2012, really, or 2013, if my memory serves me well. And here's what Netflix said. Netflix said that at Netflix, we don't do performance management. We only hire great people. And I repeat it. At Netflix, we do not do performance management. We only hire great people. I'd like you to just reflect on that thought. And I'd like to hear from anybody who thinks that, who is really thinking about this. I can hear some of those engines churning in our heads right now. What do you think Netflix was trying to convey? We don't do performance management. We only hire great people. Who would like to get a virtual chocolate this afternoon? Please feel free. Indicate by raising your hand, and I will yield the floor to you. What do you think? We don't do performance management. We only hire great people. Anybody?
Good afternoon, yes, and Happy New Year to us.
Happy New Year, Angela.
I'm just going to attempt.
Very good.
Because it's funny to see someone come to say, we don't do performance management, we only hire great people. Mm-hmm. So they are speaking with authority from what I see, what I perceive, and which means the people they are hiring are top-notch. There are people who will come and make a difference. They are not coming to babysit anyone. And there's no subjectivity. So these people are already there. So if you're not in that category, don't think of coming to Netflix, because we're not going to performance manage you. So that's what I see. Yeah. So you really have to be up there to be an employee.
Very good.
Of Netflix.
The key word you use there, we are not.
They have set a standard.
Yeah. We're not going to.
We're not going to babysit you.
Very critical.
Yeah.
We're not going to. So you see, organizations that spend their energy and time following up with people, when your boss is following up with you, have you submitted your reports? Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you met the deadline? That's babysitting. That's performance management. What are your KPIs? I want you to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If not, you will not get your salary. That's all performance management. Oh, if not, you won't get a bonus. What is Netflix saying? That the type of people that they recruit are not people that need to be micromanaged, that need to be performance managed, that need to be followed bumper to bumper. No. We hire great people, because you see, when you hire great people, you don't need all of that. Great people are self-motivated, self-actualized, transcendental people, people who see the big picture. They are A players, and we don't need to be performance managing them. Thanks very much for that perspective, Angela. You got it spot on, and you are more than deserving of a virtual chocolate. In fact, you are deserving of a physical box of chocolates. but just manage the virtual one for now. You can catch it, unwrap it, as we do at Learning Impact, and you put it in your mouth virtually, and you make that sound.
Nice.
You know it, Angela. You make everybody
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a virtual
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Ifoma says that it means that they are particular and intentional about their recruitment process. Top-notch employees only. Spot on, Ifoma. Certainly deserving of a chocolate for that comment. So now you understand where this comes from. So this was the first time ever that I was exposed to the concept of A players. It was when I read that advert from Netflix. And guess what? I was traumatized. I was very sad. I always tell the story. I was sad for two reasons. One, because as a leader of an organization, I found that I spend so much of my time performance managing people. Have you submitted your to-do list? Oh, what are you doing today? What have you delivered? Oh, have you updated your job sheets? Oh, have you delivered on your strategy initiatives? Have you met your KPI? Have you sent that letter to the client? Please go and redo that letter. Please go and redo that proposal. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I certainly have a problem. If I want to become a great organization like Netflix, then I need to start finding and selecting A players. I need to stop doing performance management. Now, the second reason why I was concerned was a lot of my practice as an organizational development consultant is around performance management. So, hey, if every organization in the world suddenly starts to find and select good players, then I may be out of business. So how does this work out for me? What is the point of being a strategy consultant if everybody, or a performance management consultant, if Netflix doesn't need performance management? And these were some of the questions that I started to reflect on, the questions on the screen. Why is it that organizations were created in the first place? Some people think that organizations exist to gather employees together, make them happy, and all will be well. Some others believe the purpose of an organization is to galvanize the right quality of people towards a certain goal and to enable them to achieve those goals. So the fundamental chicken and egg question is, which comes first, the organization and its goals, or the employees and their goals, which many times are not aligned with the goals of the organization if they are not well fit for the organization, if they are not square pegs in square holes. The second question that I often reflect on is, think about it. Which type of people do you think created the best organizations in the world? And I'd like us to, maybe a couple of people can, share their thoughts. Do you think that the best organizations in the world were created by people who were A players or just mediocre people? Or what do you think? Anybody? The best organizations in the world, were they created by people who just, managed to get by? Or were they created by really excellent people who were A players? What do you think? Yes. Does James want to say so? Or Moses? Anybody with a thought on this? Who created the best organizations in the world? All right, nobody with a thought? Well, perhaps the answer is quite obvious. The best organizations, for them to be the best, were created by the best people, top-notch people, like what Ifoma said. Now, the point of this reflection is, why do people use their time, their talent, and their energy to create an organization, want to become the best organization in the world because they are truly talented people, and then they end up recruiting people who are not so talented, people who are not so interested in that business, and so on and so forth? Why? Yeah, Fumilayo says that the best organizations are created by A players and people who are hungry for success. So Fumilayo, my point is, so how can somebody be hungry for success, be an A player, then create an organization, then have C players and D players and E players and people who are not hungry for success? Isn't that a mismatch? The third question, what is the number one predictor of success in an organization? A few months ago, we explored the concept of the balanced scorecard. I'm sure some of you remember that. And the balanced scorecard teaches us that there are 4 predictors of organizational success. There is the financial perspective, where we are looking for money, looking to grow our business. So people tell you that if capital runs out in a business, if money runs out, then the business is finished. So money is a very important predictor. If companies are well capitalized, they are more likely to succeed. But the balanced scorecard also teaches us that you need to have customers, happy customers, because if you don't have happy customers, then whatever capital you have put down will run out, because you need customers to create a sustainable income for your business. And the customers need to be happy. But the balanced scorecard also teaches us that when you start interacting with customers, you need to ensure that you've got the right processes and systems and technology and strategy in place. Because without the right strategy, technology, processes, systems, and procedures, you will lack the discipline to consistently offer great service to your customers, and people will start to exploit loopholes in your system that will inevitably cause you to lose customers and to lose money. The story of the balanced scorecard. But the balanced scorecard ends on perhaps what is, according to the resource-based view from Barney, the most important predictor. It is people. People and culture. You know why? Because it is the people and culture that will drive the processes. You see, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have the right people and culture, who is going to implement the strategy? It is the people and culture that is going to drive the customer service, who is going to interact with the customers. So if you don't have the right people and culture, then your customer service will be useless. It is the people and culture that is going to look for clients, that is going to manage your financial resources. So if you ask me, what is the number one predictor of organizational success? And I have interacted with chief executives and founders and entrepreneurs for the last 25 years, and they have all consistently said the number one predictor is people and culture. And this underlies the importance of finding the right people. So my next question, whose fault is it when you have the wrong people and culture in an organization? I'd like us to explore this. If the CEO of a company is always complaining that I have the wrong people, I have the wrong people, I have the wrong people, whose fault is that? Can anybody tell me? Who do you think is responsible for having the wrong people? Is it God's fault? God created the wrong people? What do you think? Nobody wants to get a chocolate again. Aha. Ifoma says it is human resources. It is HR who brings them in, according to Teohuna. Very good. Excellent. But who brought in HR? I mean, let's think more about that. So even HR, the HR is part of the people now. The HR person, the HR leader, the HR manager, the HR director. Chinedu says is the hiring manager. Okay. But even that hiring manager, I agree, very correct. Chinedu, thank you for that perspective. So it's not always HR's fault, because HR has to work with the line manager, with the executive, with the head of department or the unit, and they work in collaboration with each other to hire people. But even the hiring manager, Chinedu, somebody brought that person in, and someone has allowed the person to stay. Okay, James says that this happens when people are not ready to pay. Oh, that's interesting, James. Let me tell you something about what the research has shown and what our practice and experience also tells us. Guess what? We have consulted for some of the highest paying organizations in the world, and there are still recruitment errors inside. Meaning that pay does not, I can pay somebody 10 million naira a month, and the person is still incompetent. It doesn't change. Competence is not determined by pay. If you are a square peg in a round hole, you are a square peg in a round hole, no matter how much I pay you. So it's interesting what you said, James. We've looked at very small organizations that can hardly pay people 50,000 naira a month and organizations that can pay people 5 million naira a month. And guess what we found? We found that in both organizations, we have A players, and in both organizations, we have F players. Pay does not make the difference. It depends on the person. Some people are paid too much beyond their competence, and they are still mediocre. Some people are paid too little. Yes, I agree, below their competence, and that's unfortunate. But pay isn't really it. Ifoma says the executive management. So you're getting closer now. The people who take the decisions, isn't it? The people who are responsible for the culture. But I agree with all of the suggestions. HR is responsible. The organization's leaders, the stakeholders, the shareholders, the directors, the chief executive, they are responsible. The line managers and the hiring managers, we are all collectively responsible. The executive management, all of us are responsible, because every time you allow people who are not square pegs in square holes to stay in an organization, that's not the people's fault. That's your fault as an organization. So overall, my answer is the organization is responsible, and everybody in the organization who has a decision-making or authority position is responsible. Angela says, being sentimental with recruitment is the source. Exactly. Not only being sentimental, sometimes even being political, and that's part of the sentiment. Sometimes people are even nepotic, family and friends only. Sometimes people are tribal, and clannish when it comes to recruitment. The people from my place, the people from my religion. All of those things don't predict success. What predicts success is your ability to find and select A players. The final question is a rhetorical question. What type of organization do you want to be? What type of organization do you want to be? Do you want to be like the Super Eagles in 1994 that won the African Nations Cup and qualified to the World Cup and beat Bulgaria 3-0? Do you want to be like the Manchester United team of the glory days, or the Arsenal team, or the Real Madrid team that was winning world championships and UEFA Champions Leagues back to back? Or do you want to be a mediocre organization that manages to get by? Do you want to be Netflix? Or do you want to be something that nobody has ever heard of? James asks a rebuttal question. Where's the place of Henry Fayol's principle of remuneration? Remuneration is important. But the truth is this. It does not predict. What I'm saying is, I didn't say remuneration is not important. Here's what I'm saying. That the fact that you pay someone 20 million naira a month doesn't mean that the person is going to be an exceptional employee. There's no evidence about that. So you can keep throwing money. It's like they say throwing pearls at swine, at a pig. You can keep throwing money at an employee. So if you take someone who is incompetent, that's what I'm trying to say, James, and you pay the person all the money in this world, do you think that that will make the person suddenly become competent? No. In the same vein, if you take someone who is not paid that well as 10 million naira a month, does it preclude the person from being competent? Does it say, oh, because my salary is only 200,000 naira, I cannot be competent? No, it doesn't. Remuneration is part of the contract that employees have with their employers. But that does not make somebody competent. You are competent, then you earn based on your competence. Money does not predict competence, right? So I don't know the details of your thinking around Henry Fayol, but whatever Henry Fayol said, well, he said it. I don't know what it is that he said that you are alluding to, but I know for a fact and through experience and research that remuneration does not make somebody competent and another person less competent. The final thought on this slide that I think is actually very interesting and phenomenal, if you can see it, is the 5 talent tenets. This comes from Harvard Business Review, and it says, what are the 5 principles from Netflix about talent management? It says, hire, reward, and tolerate only fully formed adults. I love that expression. Look at it. I didn't say it. These are not my words. You know what fully formed is? According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, fully formed adults are people who are self-actualized, self-motivated, transcendental people, people who see the big picture. Just like what Angela said. Angela, remember the language you used? We don't have time to babysit people. You don't want to hire people that require babysitting. Secondly, tell the truth about performance. Oh, yes. And this is an area that organizations and leaders struggle. Tell the truth. According to good to great theory, Jim Collins says, confront the brutal facts. If you can't tell people in an organization that out of 100, they scored 30, instead, you are using flowery language. You say, oh, I'm trying to motivate people. So someone didn't do something well. You say, oh, you did such a great job. Oh, excellent. Remind me of that thing in schools, in our schools in Nigeria now, that prize giving day in primary school, everyone has to have a prize. Because if they don't give my child a prize, my child will cry. So parents go around begging the headmistress and the principal, please make sure there's a prize for my child. So they have all sorts of unbelievable prizes now, the child with the best smile, the child who stood the tallest in the class, the child who, who looked forward to, who was always sitting in front of the class every class. And then you get to the prize giving day and people are clapping. We are not here for babysitting. Let's tell the truth about performance. If somebody is a 3/10, the person is a 3/10. You tell the person. You have evidence to back it up. It is not personal. Because if you can't tell the truth about performance, then you can't be a great organization. Managers own the job of creating great teams. So according to Netflix, they are trying to answer that question. Who is responsible for this mess? It is the managers. It is the organization. It is the owners. It is the directors. It is the managers who are responsible in cahoots with human resources for ensuring that we've got the right teams. Leaders own the job of creating the company culture, and human resources has the job of being the custodian of that culture, ensuring that even the leaders are kept in check when it comes to the culture. And this is the one that I found most scandalous. Please, these are not my words. These are the words of the people at Netflix. Can anybody read the last one for me? I don't want to say it myself before you will say it was Michelle who said so. Is any HR? Read it.
Number 5.
Yes, number 5. What does it say?
Good talent managers think like business people and innovators first, and like HR people last.
Angela, do you see the scandalous part of that statement at the end?
Yeah.
That they think like HR people last. You see, so there's a problem. This is what I keep saying to HR people. There's a problem. This was written by the HR director, the talent director at Netflix. The problem is that HR people, we have been given a bad rap that we are not business people. We are not innovators. You see? So they are telling people that if you want to know how to manage talent, think like business people, think like innovators, but don't think like HR people. I think it's a shame. And it's a brutal fact that we have to confront as HR people to say, how can we start to change the mindset of HR, the perception of HR? And it's not going to happen by us just wishing it away and saying, no, 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 this thing they are saying is not true. This thing they are saying is not true. HR people are strategic. HR people are strategic. No, it's not by saying it. It's not by claiming it. It's not by prophesying it. It is by actually being it. And that is one of the purposes of this program, the Champions of HR program, to equip HR people so that this narrative will change. That when you ask the most successful organizations, what does it take to manage talent, that they would say it would be like behaving like a good HR person who is innovative, who is business-like. That is our sincere hope for you, all of us participants in this program, especially those of us who are HR professionals. So now that we have discussed some of that background and context, let's go into the meat of it. Why are A players important? And I'd like to share with you a few thoughts very quickly. One is that A players are so, what do you call it, are so good. You see, if you hire an A player, let me tell you for a fact, the person will do her job and she'll do like 3 people's job. That's the beauty of an A player. They will pay for. So think about this. When you ask people in an organization, what is your salary? Everybody here, think about your salary. Write it down. Then ask yourself, how much have you contributed to the success of your company in the last 1 month? For example, if you're a salesperson, have you sold the value of your salary? Have you made it in sales? So, because if you haven't made it in sales, you have not paid for yourself. Talk less of paying for others. So sometimes some people, if you ask them, are you an A player? They'll say, yes, I'm an A player. Then I ask them, okay, how much have you contributed to the success of your company in Naira and Kobo this month? What is the tangible? Have you brought in clients? Have you developed new products? Have you opened new opportunities? Write the value of the things that you have delivered. Don't say you came to work and spent transport. Because some people, when you ask them, what have you done for the organization? They say, I transported myself to work and I spent 150,000 on transport. Spending 150,000 naira on transport is not the purpose of work. You can sit at home and deliver the results without coming to the office. Everybody says, let's work from home. No problem. You don't have to spend money. Having spent money on transport doesn't mean that you have contributed. In fact, it just means you have contributed to the economy of those selling petrol and to the people who run taxi services. A players require minimal supervision. You don't need to be following them around, bumper to bumper. A players align with the culture and expectations of the organization. A players are self-motivated. Jim Collins in the book Good to Great, which I always refer to, talks about the fact that it is not our job to motivate people in the office. That's not your job. That's not the job. No, it is not our job to make people happy. Go and check out my post on LinkedIn during the week. That's not the job of an organization. The job of an organization is to galvanize talent together to achieve strategic goals. It is your job to make yourself happy. It is your job to motivate yourself. It is your job to be self-actualized. It is your job to be transcendental. And when you have done all of these things on yourself, when you have worked on yourself properly, and you continue to work on yourself every day, here's what will happen. Your organization will add to your happiness. Yes. It is not the organization's job to make you happy. You will be happy. Then when you are happy, you will contribute towards the organization. And then guess what will happen? The organization will add to your happiness. And it's the same in everything. Some people get married. They think that the goal of life is for their wife to make them happy. It's not true. For your husband to make you happy. It's not true. The only person that can make you happy in your marriage is yourself. And when you are happy, and you are continuously pursuing happiness, then your wife will add to your happiness. Your husband will add to your happiness. People who look for happiness in their spouses end up being hurt. People who look for happiness in their jobs end up being hurt. Be happy first. Your job, your spouse, your children, your parents, your siblings, your country. If you are looking for, you say, I want Nigeria to make me happy. No, it's never going to happen. Be happy first. And if we're all happy and we contribute towards making a better Nigeria, your spouse, your parents, your children, your job, your teacher, your boss will add to your happiness. Finally, but not exhaustively, A players are able to do one powerful thing, and this is so powerful. They are able to attract other A players. Because if you are an A player, here's what happens. You would have you will, they say, how do they say it? Birds of the same feather flock together. Isn't that the saying? So if you are an A player, here's what will happen. You will be able to flock with other A players and attract other A players to the organization. So if you want to create an organization that is full of A players, hire an A player and you will see other A players coming. If you hire mediocres, you will attract mediocres. Just for context, mediocres are the opposite of A players. What do A players look like? What are some of the characteristics of A players? A players are confident, competent, and committed. Very important. Confident, competent, and committed. They are ready to go beyond the call of duty. A players don't count how much is the salary you paid me. They don't consider that. They understand who they are. They understand the talent and the potential that resides in them, and they give it their very best. You know, I always give the example, and it may seem a bit corny, but I always say to people that as a trainer, I have done trainings for free for people. I've done trainings for free. This training we are doing right now, this training we are doing right now is free, isn't it? So did I come late for this training because it was free? No. Am I training substandard because it is free? Am I training like, am I behaving like, well, this is free, so I'm not going to give you all my best? No. And that disproves the concept of money as a motivator. Sometimes we do things because we love to do it. And that's the type of people you are looking for. They require zero supervision and they make zero errors. They're not perfect people, but they don't make errors. They are conscientious. They try to cover all the bases. They're not perfect. They will make mistakes from time to time, but they don't make those types of grave errors. And even when they make errors, they immediately recognize their faults and address it and take ownership and apologize. Those are the types of people that are A players. A players are self-driven. They are strategic thinkers. They are an exemplar of the organizational culture. And very important, they have a track record. You see, when you look at the back, when you look at the history of an A player, when you check their antecedents, they have story. They have antecedents. You see, when you look at this person started here, has gone here, has achieved this. They have a track record of excellence. When you look at an A player, you can see continuous improvement in their careers, in their remuneration, in the choices they have made, and the contributions they have made to society. You see progress. These, my dear friends on the Champions of HR group, and all of those who are watching and learning from us today, are the characteristics of A players. So the question you want to ask, as a human resources management professional, as a leader in an organization, are your employees A players? Do they meet these criteria? Are they A potentials? People who can, one day, who are on the journey? Or are they C, D, E, and F? Because that is part of the reality. What are some of the tactics for recruiting and selecting A players? And we are getting close to the end of our conversation today. The law of attraction. The first thing to do is attract likes, attract likes. If you want to create a culture of A players, then hire A players and leverage those A players to hire other A players. Secondly, hire slow. Don't be in a rush. They call it the power of 3. Interview somebody 3 times. Get 3 different people to interview the person. Take your time to hire people. Use what we call the threat of a reference call. The threat of a reference call is very simply, ask people when you are interviewing them, when you want to interview someone, and we've done this very successfully and it's made so much of a difference. Ask people right there at the interview or before the interview or when you are giving them a test. Tell them that they should write down the telephone numbers of the people they reported to directly in their last jobs, not on their current job, but in their previous jobs, that you want to call the people now. Should I tell you what happens in real life? People who have been mediocre, they will start telling you things like, oh, my boss in my former company, I've lost his number. Yes. Oh, my boss no longer lives in Nigeria. Yes. No matter where he lives, we can find him. You start hearing stories. They'll tell you, I'll get back to you. The story will continue. Sometimes they will even give you a fake number and try to arrange one of their family members to take the call. People who are A players, when you ask them, it's like me, and I'm using myself. If you ask me now, can you give me the name of 3 clients of Learning Impact so that we will call to confirm whether Learning Impact is a good trainer or a good consultant? I'll give you the number on the spot. In fact, I'll be harassing you to call the people. Do you know why? Because A players know that when you call their former bosses, what will happen? They know that their bosses will give them a good reference. D players and E players don't want you to call their bosses. Run away from such people. We call it the threat of a reference call. And don't only threaten to do it, actually do it. And when you call the person, be careful. Be careful who you are calling. We've done reference calls. Sometimes they give you fake numbers, so you have to be really careful. Sometimes the person you are speaking to is also a mediocre. People have mediocre bosses all the time. So a mediocre will tell you that a mediocre is great. So you have to be sure about the person you're actually calling and whether that person really represents the type of values and expectations that you want. Use competency-based auditions. Get people to actually demonstrate the competencies you want. If you want somebody to be able to do a presentation to clients, then make sure that in that interview, you actually get the person to do a presentation. And you evaluate, you audition the person. Auditioning is a very powerful thing that forward-thinking organizations are using to attract the right people. Please do a background check. One of the biggest problems in our HR community, especially with smaller sized businesses, is that we don't go through the rigor of background checks. So people are just hopping from one mediocre behavior, from one mediocre performance to another, carrying their mediocrity from one organization to another. And we are allowing it to happen because we are not doing rigorous background checks. Find out, these people who are coming to your organization, where did they work before? What did the people in that organization think about them? What was the condition under which they left? Does it tally with the story they told you? You will be amazed Evaluate people's career and remuneration growth. This is really important. Plot a graph. There are tools for it. Plot a graph. When Tunde said he was working in 3, 5, 10 years ago, what was his grade? Plot it. Has his grade increased sustainably over time? Has his salary increased? Or has he been in a plateau for the last 7 years? If someone has been in a plateau for the last 7 years, it tells you something about the person. So evaluate people's contributions, evaluate people's learning, their professional development, evaluate people's career path, evaluate people's salary. How has it grown? Because if it hasn't grown, then start asking questions. Assess people for the culture that you want in your organization. Organizations need to define clearly as HR people, what is the expectation we have of our employees, and inculcate that expectation into your evaluations. Don't just look for the technical skills or presentation skills, analytic skills. Also evaluate behavior. And very importantly, and finally, but not exhaustively, there are many things you can do, is document the realistic job preview. You see that thing I said about this is how our organization is, the realistic job preview for good and for bad. So whatever it is, if it is that in our organization, people need to work extra hours and they don't get any form of, what they call it, overtime, write it. People work weekends, write it. People need to read books, write it. People need to, what they call it, be vulnerable, write it. Whatever it is, people need to be able to apologize for bad behavior, write it. People need to be able to sell, write it. People need to be able to go on LinkedIn and post about their company and the products of the company, write it. When you write all these things down, tell the prospective employee they should read it and sign. Yes. No messing around. So that tomorrow you don't come back and tell me that, oh, I'm not aware that these are the expectations of the company. No, you will write it down and you will append your signature. This is how you recruit. And anybody who says they cannot sign it, tell them no problem. This organization is not for you. Period. This is how organizations that are successful are able to find and recruit top talents. Does anybody have any questions before we proceed? Questions, comments? I think there's a question from James. So let me address that question, and other people may be thinking about questions. How can private school owners handle the challenge based on the example about a parent who demands for an award and so on, knowing that the aim of every company is to make profit? So it's simple. It's a very simple answer, James. So every organization, every private organization has a profit motive, isn't it? So would you do anything if your client tells you outside a school, think about it now. So you are in a bank. Let's use a bank as an example. So a client comes to a bank and tells the bank that they should do some dodgy things with his account. If not, he will pull out his money. What would the bank say? That you compromise on your ethics and your values. What will you say? Because you see, your question, James, is the beginning of the problem. It might seem like a very basic thing, or children want prizes, so they will cry if they don't get the prize. Yeah, that seems like a very basic thing. But if you extrapolate that question to the next level, for people like us who are educators and we understand the problem, you know what the next problem is? I want my child to pass the exam. Even if my child doesn't know how to solve the maths, I want you to make sure that my child always gets 90%. You've taken the conversation to the next level now. I want you to ensure that my child is top of the class, even if she fails the exam. And I'm paying you money. So here is some money. Isn't this the basis for exam malpractice and all the shenanigans that is taking place in our society? So that's the answer, James. It's a choice. You decide. Are there schools that are indulging in exam malpractice? Yes, there are. Are there banks that are indulging in customer malpractice and financial malpractice? Yes, they are. That's their choice. You decide. I have decided the type of bank, company, or school that I would be. Yeah. Chinedu asks, how do you deal with the reality of A players? An A player dealing, if you're an A player and the people are what they call it, are mediocres, well, you should leave now. As an A player, you shouldn't be working with mediocre people. Yeah, that goes without saying. But you said, is it possible that a positive reference can be gotten from such a context? Well, you try now. And if you are an A player, let me put it to you this way, Shinedu. If you've worked for 5 companies, right? You believe you are an A player and you are very competent and you're very good. And you give us the names of 5 people you've worked for, and all 5 of them say that you are incompetent. What do you think is because sometimes it was John Maxwell, he calls it the Bob principle. He said, everybody has a problem with Bob. If Bob has a problem with everybody, then Bob has a problem. You cannot keep saying that I worked for this company. They didn't like me. My bosses were incompetent. I went to the next company. My bosses were incompetent. I went to the next company. My bosses were incompetent. As we say in Nigeria, now only you waka come. How is that possible? Yeah. So it is important that you think about that. But there may be situations where it will be possible. But out of 3 or 5 references, certainly 1 or 2 will say very accurate things about that without prejudice and without bias. Yeah. Francis Tiohuna asks, whose fault when the organization didn't recruit based on the HR recommendation? HR, if you feel that you have a policy on recruitment, you have standards for how recruitment should be done, and it is not being followed, my question, why are you still working there? Are there no other choices in the market? So everybody has to make choices. The other question you can ask, what can you do to influence your bosses to see? So if you are tracking it, you say, the last time we did recruitment, these were recommendations we made. These recommendations ended up being previously unidentified recruitment error, isn't it? So you are able to use some data, show us the evidence that by not following your recommendations, we ended up in a mess. Use data, be a data-driven HR person. Document what you said. Document the recommendations and the processes that you asked people to follow. Document the results and show it to the people, your leader, and say, Oga, this is what we did. This is what we asked for. This is what happened, contrary to our recommendation. And this is the result. And if after that they sack you, it's okay. Move on. Dust your sandals. Abby, remember, no job is going to make you happy. If you make yourself happy first, then your job will contribute towards your happiness. Right? Thanks very much, everyone, for those questions. Very interesting and very exciting questions. I had a few questions and I thought we could do a bit of a group activity, but I don't think we can jump into our groups, unfortunately, because of time. We had plenty of questions and plenty of discussions around some of the issues. These are things that you can reflect on. So I think we've answered the first question where, what do you think about A players? And I can see your feedback from different people asking questions about this concept. And of course, what are some of the practical limitations? So some of you have shared with us some of these limitations. What if my boss is not good? What if they don't follow our recommendations in HR? A few questions I would like you to reflect on. The first is, what percentage of, now that we've understood what A players mean and what it is to be an A player, what percentage of your company, of your organization, would you say are A players? Remember those characteristics of A players that we talked about: competence, confident, error-free, requiring minimum supervision, seeing the big picture, and so on and so forth, alignment with the organization's culture. How many people in your organization in percentage terms do you think are A players? Whatever answer you give, would your CEO or the owners of that organization agree with your analysis? Here's my experience. My experience is that many times when we ask employees this question, they have a very high number. When we ask HR people, they have a number that is somewhere between medium and high. But when we ask the owners of the business or the people who represent the owners at the executive level, they tend to have a much more acidic version. Their numbers are much lower, sometimes incredibly. I mean, I remember a client of ours who brutally assessed this and said that at that time, A players in his company was less than 1%. The HR person thought it was like 70. We were in the same room. MD said 1. HR said 70. What a huge disparity. And I've seen those types of disparities in many organizations. Final question, and that's what I want us to talk about next. Beyond recruitment and selection, what can we do to ensure that we have A players in our organizations? What do you think? Anybody wants to share thoughts around any of these questions? The floor is open. Yes, I see a post. Aha. Ifoma says that beyond recruitment and selection, we should invest in training, in learning and development, and continuous improvement. Very good. Excellent. Ifoma, absolutely correct and deserving of chocolate. So enjoy your virtual chocolate, unwrap it, and so that you make the other people jealous. Yeah, thanks for that contribution. Anybody else? Yes, Angela supports the motion from the Honorable Angela, is in support of Honorable Ifoma's position. The Honorables are supporting. Anybody else? What else can we do? What do you think about the percentage of A players? Do you think your number is too low, too high? Do you think that your number will be the same as your CEO's number? It's very important to think about these things because HR people, you are the custodian of organizational performance and culture, and finding and selecting A players is a critical role that you need to drive in your organization. Yeah. Damilare says, very good. Implement an effective talent management process. Excellent, Damilare. Excellent. Please enjoy this chocolate. Catch it, unwrap it, and make everybody jealous. Excellent. An effective talent management process, because talent management is about not just attracting and selecting, but it's also about developing and deploying, as well as retaining the right quality of talent. So you must go beyond just the attraction to develop, to deploy, and so on and so forth. Thank you, that. James says, continue with on-the-job training and organizational restructuring. So you continue to train people. Yeah, very good. Excellent. Thanks for that contribution, James. Excellent contribution. So James and Damilare and Olalekon says frequent mentoring. Very good. And objective, very important, objective performance management. So chocolates for Damilare, for Olalekon, for James. There's one more contribution, Moses. Moses says that regarding the disparities of A players from CEOs and HR, it is good to get a clear understanding, very good, of what type of team the CEO wants and create clear targets that are achievable. Excellent. Can you see that? So you see that sometimes, Moses, the problem is that maybe the HR people too need to be realigned. Maybe HR and executives need to speak from the same cloth. They need to speak from the same perspective. So maybe that's where the problem is, clearly. Because if MD is saying 1% and HR is saying 70, then there is something that is not very clear. Yeah, excellent. And Osamui says that monitoring and managing the balance between company and individual goals, very important. And your goal as an individual must always be in congruence with the organization's goals, because this is not, the organization wasn't built for you. The organization was built to serve the interests of its customers and its stakeholders. And you as an employee now coming to that organization should ask the question, what is the goal of this organization? And do I, Osamui, do I, Olalekon, do I, Moses, do I fit into these goals? Can I align my personal interests with the organizational interests? And if I can, then this is a good place to work. And I will be an A player. But if I can't, then I would always be misaligned. Thank you, Osamui, for sharing that. Please enjoy your chocolate. And Angela says, evaluation. Carry out surveys to measure where we are and where we want to be. Very important. And sometimes that gap analysis, Angela, is critical. And work with the outcome. Exactly. See, so where we are and where we want to be. So where are we going? And how are we going to get there? And how do we continue to push the flywheel of progress? And what Angela said is so profound. So one of the things I think that, and Angela, thanks for that insight, is that we should go back to our organizations and ask the question, where are we in terms of A players? What percentage are we? What percentage is our target? I mean, we've worked with organizations like this. I remember a client of ours many years ago, we had this discussion. When we had the discussion, it was about 15%. I said, what is your target? He said 100. I said, no, your target can't be 100. Slow down. In the next 1 year, you want to move from 15 to 30, then from 30 to 60. Now, that organization has achieved like 80%. This is after about 8 years. It's not easy, but it is possible. So you have to be systematic about it. You have to analyze where you are today and start to think about where you want to be in future, and then start to work it out. Yeah, to work out that outcome. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, what can you do to top grade your organization? And those are all the things you've been talking about. And I knew that, I could get a lot of input from you. So go back. Somebody talked about it. I can't remember. I think it was James talked about restructuring the organization. So James, you're correct. We need to workforce plan. We need to go back. What's the design of the organization? How do we design work? We need to think about it. We need to pay attention to things in onboarding. How do we onboard people who are coming for the first time? We need to pay attention to learning and development. A lot of you spoke about learning and development. And a number of you also spoke about performance management and the alignment of rewards. These are other things. So apart from attracting and selecting A players, these are other things that are part of what we call the high performance work practices of the employee life cycle that HR people and organizational leaders need to pay attention to. On the screen, if you can see it at the right-hand corner, is a QR code. I don't know if you guys can take that QR code, if you can see it on the screen, scan it. I'll leave this slide on for another 1 minute. So if you go to your phones, if you have an iPhone, you can just try to take a picture. If you have an Android phone, you can put on your QR code scanner. Scan that QR code so that you can get access to a free resource on top grading. Top grading is a concept that was developed by a scholar called Bradford Smart, Brad Smart, Dr. Smart, and he wrote an amazing book. And he is responsible for the theory and the practice of A players. So his book, Top Grading, is about how to find, keep, and create a culture of A players in your organization. I consider it one of the good books of human resources management. Thick book, this thick, very deep and very rich, and I have read it, and I constantly reference it. And he is the authority in that area, and a leading light on the subject of top grading your organization. So there's a synopsis of the book that is available from Learning Impact that discusses in contextual terms some of the ways to top grade the organization. So please scan that QR code and feel free to take advantage of the book. Finally, what have we learned? So we've been together for the last 1.5 hours. We started off exploring theoretical and empirical foundations, the person to organization fit theory, the resource-based view theory, and a couple of other theories that help us to understand why it is important to find and select A players and how to go about it. Then I shared with you some thoughts on organizational success using the case study of that amazing organization, Netflix, that says, Netflix, we don't do performance management, we just hire great people. We explored the importance of A players. A players pay for themselves, and they pay for other people, you know. They are double, as we say in Nigeria. They come and perform magic. Yeah. We explore the characteristics of A players and challenged you to go back and ask yourself with brutal honesty what type of people you have in your organization. And then we talked about how to find and select A players, and I shared a number of best practices, foremost amongst which are the threat of a reference call, using auditions and competencies to assess people, and of course, doing background checks and ensuring that you document the realistic job previews that you have. And then I shared a thought and listened to your contributions about how to top grade your organization, and also shared that free article that you can go and read. So that essentially is our mentoring program for today. I see that there are a couple of questions that I need to answer, so I'm going to answer those questions very quickly. First from James, how do I get this material? So James, if you want to be a member of the Champions of HR Mentoring WhatsApp group, please share your contact details right here so that we can invite you to the WhatsApp group, because on the WhatsApp group, all the members of the WhatsApp group have access to all of these materials, as well as other materials on human resources management. Olalekan asks, and anybody else who would like to join the group, thank you. Olalekan has shared his number. I hope that the program managers who are here from the Organizational Effectiveness Department at Learning Impact will pick this up and add Olalekan and anybody else to the group. Olalekan also asks, the reality is that in most offices, like in the public sector, these insights are not easy to go by as middle-level officers, not until when we A players get to the top. So Olalekan, let me tell you the funny thing, I agree with you completely. I mean, in public service, it's a bit of a difficult, different kettle of fish, but I want to share two things with you that will shock you. I mean, one might not shock you. So let me give you the one I think will shock you is, the same thing happens in the private sector. Everybody thinks that they would make a better organization when they get to the top. John Maxwell calls it destination disease. We all suffer from it. And in the private sector, it happens too, where people think, don't worry, when I get to the top, when I become a GM, then I will be able to do great things. It doesn't really work like that. And the second one that may not surprise you is, think about this. Do you think, Olalekan, that you are the first, that people in your generation, your sets in the public service that are your sets, Are you the first people to be smart in this world? The answer is no. Have people in the public service before you who were middle people, young people, burnt with this fervor and said, yes, when I get to the top, we will change things? Yes, they have. Did anything change? Not really. Because if we think that we can only make change when we get to the top, here's what will happen. When you get to the top, unfortunately, the change will change you. It's sad, but it's part of our reality. But you're definitely correct that unfortunately, sometimes our hands are tied. But hey, that's why we should ask the more important question. Who are the people at the top? What is the quality of the political and executive leadership in our society? And guess what? Fortunately for us, we have a role to play in deciding the people who have political power, because the fish rots from the head. So you are right. If we had better political leaders at the top of our organizations, of our ministries and our departments and agencies, then it will be better. But here's the problem. If we don't do something, thank God we are not in a military regime. It's called destination disease. Tiohuna. It's a disease that when I reach here, I will be good. It doesn't work that way. Yeah? So we need to build that capability. And we have to ask ourselves, who are the people? Thank God we are not in a military regime. We are not in a monarchy. Every 4 years, we get the chance to decide who our political leaders are. Here's what an American professor said, and I always laugh about it. He says, the thing about democracy and elections is that the people who offer themselves for political positions, the politicians, are often not saints. Most times they're not saints, they're not good people. And then he says, and in the same vein, the people who go and vote are often not geniuses either. They are often quite stupid. So they end up voting for the demons. Then they come back and they complain. Yeah, but long story, long discussion, perhaps for another day. Yeah, but I thought that I should address the issue of the public sector in that rich context that I hope has challenged all of us, including the person who asked the question, to have a rethink about how we run the public sector in Nigeria. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time, for your attention, and for giving us the opportunity to share this afternoon into the evening with you. My 24-karat gold, 18 studded, diamond studded Rolex says that it's now 5:32 p.m. West African time. So on this note, I would like to officially bring our program to the end for today, and encourage you to continue to build your capabilities as a HRM professional, as an organizational leader. I know some of our participants here are not HRM people. They're people who are aspiring to HR. There are people who are also organizational leaders in other contexts. And we encourage you to join our Champions of HR platform and group. I think my colleagues have shared the link to the WhatsApp page. Please feel free to click it and join. And we look forward to seeing you same time next month, the third Saturday in February, as we continue on this journey of building HR capabilities here in Nigeria and everywhere else in the world. You will get the slides for today on the WhatsApp group, and you will also get the videos for today. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening, the rest of your weekend, and Happy New Year, and all the best in the year ahead. And I thank you all for your messages and your thanks and your feedback. And please feel free to invite others to join the group and to join us every month for this program if you have found it rewarding. I'd like to thank my colleagues from Learning Impact who have done a lot of work behind the scenes to ensure that the program is successful And of course, to all of you for joining us and making it worth the while. Take care.